Bonjour, and welcome to the Amateur Detective Club. This club is exactly how it sounds. A bunch of amateurs talking about their favorite mysteries. So if you encounter a real mystery or a murder, contact the proper authorities. Do not come to us. We do not know what we are doing. But enjoy the program. Allons-y. Let us begin.
Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours.
I now call this meeting of the Amateur Detective Club to order. I am Tristan Miller, Kid Cop.
I am Miles Neuvirth, Boy Detective.
And Melissa is, on the day we're recording this, getting her surgery for breast cancer removal. So she will not be here on this episode. If you want to wish her well, you can do that on Twitter. Reach out to her or in the Facebook group. She is going to be just fine. They caught it really early. All that. It's a weird way to start the beginning of this episode.
But yes,
But it's
send
necessary.
your thoughts and wishes to her.
Because we all love and miss her. So we're going to talk about another John Scalzi novel. It's called Lock-In. Its sequel, Head On, is out today.
As of today, I got my copy on Audible. I'm very excited to listen to it.
Is it Will Wheaton again?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, it's the version
Will
I have.
Wheaton does a great job with
Yes.
most of John Scalzi's books. By that, I mean he narrates most of them.
Yeah.
Now, what's cool about this novel is not only is it read by Will Wheaton, it is also read by Amber. Miles is getting the name right now.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta look on my device.
Amber
Oh no.
Pinskadan.
Amber Pinskadan.
Oh boy.
Oh,
We should not do this show without Melissa, is what I'm learning. Melissa, we're so sorry.
We're so sorry. I have to actually just Google it. Amber Benson.
Amber Benson, because the main character, it's never specified what gender they are,
Yeah.
because it is not necessary to the story whatsoever.
Yeah, it's never brought up. The whole thing's told from first person, so you never hear like the narrator say his or hers. It's just mine.
Theirs, yeah, it's mine.
And people refer to the character as Chris Shane.
Chris Shane, who is a recent detective in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, suffers from a disease called Hayden syndrome.
Yes,
Which is a form of meningitis wherein
it's a virus with three parts. The first part comes off like some sort of super flu. Then that kills a percentage of people, and a percentage of people also go into a second phase, which is like meningitis.
where your brain swells up.
Yeah, from there, it will make changes to your brain structure, and in a percentage of those people, it changes their brains enough that it leaves them what is known as locked in.
Or paralyzed or immobile.
Yeah, they're fully functioning in their brain department, but their brain can no longer communicate with their central nervous system, so they can't speak, they can't move at all.
And as a solution to this, they've created what are known as threeps, which are
Personal transports.
robot skeletons, essentially, where you can project your consciousness into this machine and drive it as you would a car.
Yeah, they.
But it's a body.
Yeah, they invented these things that are neural networks, and it was the first way they could communicate well with these people who were locked in. And then someone built basically bodies these neural networks can connect with that have like full sensory
Bluetooth.
feedback and full like touch. It is basically they've given them a body. It just happens to be made of metal.
Yeah, and not everyone uses a body, as we find out throughout the thing. Some people just use what is known as the agora, which is essentially like it's a connection of neural networks. It's almost like I would say an intranet, not an internet, an intranet, and which is interesting. And what's interesting about that, there are two sections. There are sections for Haydens, and then sections that are just like available to the public, where you can go and you can talk to your daughter, who is, like basically meeting rooms. But
Yeah.
because the
And
way
you can get to those through like
VR
glasses, or like there are a certain percentage of people who got Haydens who didn't get locked in, but their brain was changed enough that they can also like. And they also get neural networks, and Haydens can like integrate with their bodies the way they integrate with a threep, and sort of like get to experience things in an actual human body. And this is a service that that certain people provide.
Yeah.
They're known as integrators.
Or mules.
Or mules. There is a lot going on right at this moment. One of the things that got people to develop all this technology for Hayden's was this huge act by the government that basically set aside so much money for anyone working towards this thing, and it had a lot of rules attached to it. Like, you can take like a bunch of this money, but literally everything you make using that money at all has to be available to everyone else using this money. So people get to work off of each other's work in a way that allowed for
A lot of progress.
A lot of progress very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's what got them to where they are today. Recently, a bill was just passed that will dice this up hugely.
What in Kettering's?
Abrams Kettering.
Abrams Kettering.
Yeah, which will make it so a lot of Hayden's their medical care won't be being paid for by the government, and a lot of them who work for companies that are researching Hayden's might not have as much jobs, because a lot of those companies are getting out of the sector because they no longer can just get a bunch of free money from the government for doing it.
Yeah, and the thought behind changing it is that Hayden's are now at a point of privilege because they don't have to pay, they don't need jobs, they don't do anything, but they're fully functioning members of society.
Yeah, some of them are more capable because there's things a 3 body can do a human body can't. So they have this thing that can give them an advantage, and they're still getting money from the government. As a protest to this, there is a walkout going on where a large number of Haydens are not going into work to show how much, to demonstrate our lives are about to be disrupted horribly. Here's an example for you to experience of how much of a disruption that can be. There's also going to be a march happening at the end of the week, led by a Hayden activist, whose name I'll probably remember. There's a lot going on right at the start of this thing.
What is her name?
Alexandra Bell.
Yes, Alexandra Bell. Okay, so, and the walkout happens to coincide with Chris Shane's first day, which is kind of fun because they're but because of that, it was just paperwork, and his partner wasn't ready to hook up with him.
Yeah, she was testifying in a case, so he just basically went in and did paperwork.
Comes back out, first day, actual day. They go to the Watergate Hotel, which is where the crime they're investigating is committed, because it was presumably, it was committed with an integrator by the name of, what's Bell's first?
Nicholas Bell.
Nicholas Bell, brother of Alexandra Bell,
who
is doing the process. And since there's an integrator involved, it's assumed that it crosses state borders, therefore it's the FBI, the federal bureau, rather than the local police force. There's a lot of tension there. What's his partner's name again? What is his partner's name again?
Oh, man. There's a lot of names in this thing.
It's okay, I got it.
Okay. So he gets there, or they get there, shoot. This is going to be tough for me.
I'll say, you say her, you say him, I'll say her. We'll try and say there as much as possible.
Okay.
Because I do think of Chris as a woman, even though
whenever I cast it in my head, I cast it as a woman. Though it'd mostly be motion capture if there was a film, I assume.
Or we could hire they should hire just a non-binary person, and then it
also true. They arrive at the crime scene to find their partner standing outside smoking, and a love seat has been thrown out of a window and landed on a car. They head upstairs, have a mild confrontation with some local police before they get in the room, and they find there's a body on the floor that's neck has been slit. Chris starts mapping the room with their cameras, and they find a shattered glass on the ground that could possibly be the murder weapon. And they request the feed from the arresting police officer of Nicholas Bell. When they see that feed, the police officer rushes in, sees Nicholas Bell, asks him why he killed that man. Nicholas Bell says, "I don't think I did," and then gets shot with a taser.
Yes.
And then brought in. So they decide to go try and talk to Nicholas Bell if they can. While this is happening,
Agent Van.
Agent Van, yes. Okay.
They go and they interrogate this person. He is not cooperative.
What we learn that this is that Van used to be an integrator.
Yeah.
So the first thing that happens when Van gets in the room is Van brings up a integrator kind of exclusive experience. The first words out of her mouth are bacon cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Because the first thing any Hayden wants when they get into body again for the first time is to go and have a bacon cheeseburger. So Van sort of starts to get Nicholas talking, but pretty quickly Nicholas shuts up, seemingly angry because
They
tased him for apparently no reason.
Jump cut to his lawyer coming in, which he's called, who is, what is his name? Oswald Cobblepot. His name's not that, but he's a big shot guy who is a big lawyer who is trying to cure Hayden's disease. He's
not. He works for Accelerant, who is a company that does a lot of like
Threep stuff. I'm getting
techs on
confused,
neural networks. Yeah. So he works for that company, and they're like, "Well, you make millions of dollars working.
Why are you this guy's lawyer?"
Accelerant, and apparently this integrator does a bunch of charity work for a charity that is very important to the lawyer.
Cool.
Basically reads him the riot act, says you can't prove anything.
Let my client go.
Let him go or charge him with something. Either
do.
way, I'm gonna sue you or we're gonna leave.
Yeah, they leave.
Let him go.
Yeah. So now they have this mystery of this guy whose throat was cut in the Watergate Hotel, who they quickly figure out is of Native American
Navajo specifically.
Background.
Descent,
so that because he doesn't have any like state ID, nothing, because he's off the grid, because those are independent countries. And so they go, okay, now we have to talk to the Federal Bureau of Investigation has to go talk to a
Navajo Nation.
Yep, which is a little rough because now I don't know if you know this, Miles. Not a great track record.
Not a great relationship there. Yeah. And so they also see through walking through like a virtual recreation of the room based on the map that it seems like the wound on the victim might have been self-inflicted.
Yes.
So it would seem they threw a love seat out the window and cut their throat in front of this guy, and they have no idea why.
And then that's quickly proven because there is a smashed glass underneath where the fellow was sitting.
Yeah, and they run the fingerprints. The fingerprints belong to the
So-
victim. Also, like, he has blood on his hands, and Nicholas Bell had blood on his person, but not on his hands, which wouldn't make sense.
Now there's a little bit of a B-plot stuff with Chris Shane and his father and mother. He goes to visit what he thinks is a nice family dinner, but turns out is another pitch for his father to try and... He's running for Senate.
Yes.
Yeah, he's running for Senate, and he's doing a meeting, like a hubbub thing.
Yeah, like fundraising sort of thing.
Yeah.
And because Marcus Shane, Chris Shane's father, is like an huge basketball star and real estate mogul, and also was like one of the people who pushed heavily for Hayden's research because
His kid
kid had Hayden's.
Chris Shane was the
poster
child for it because they were in the limelight. There were two people that were really noteworthy. One was the First Lady of the United States at the time, Margaret
Hayden.
Yeah. And then
Chris Shane.
Yeah. So those are the two people.
Yeah. So Marcus Shane is running for Senate, or like looking to announce that he wants to run for Senate soon, so he's fundraising with these people.
Hubbard, by the way, is the lawyer's name.
Yes. Chris gets home, sees that this is happening, and isn't happy, but is surprised to find one of the people there is Nicholas Bell.
Yeah.
And driving Nicholas Bell is the CEO of Accelerant.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Hubbard?
I think Hubbard...
I think Lucas Hubbard is the CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lawyer still escapes me.
Okay, I'm going to try and find it. But anyway.
Okay. But yeah. So, and one of the things they thought was it's weird that Hubbard's lawyer came to help out Nicholas Bell. Is there possibly a connection between Hubbard and Nicholas? Which this dinner seems to confirm. Yes, there is. The lawyer is also there, but instead of being in a threep, is with an integrator that is female, because apparently the lawyer's normal integrator was unavailable that night.
Yes.
they go around, they have dinner, they talk a bit about the politics of Hayden's and like the changes Abrams Kettering is about to have happen. And they introduce the owner of a company called Loudon Pharma, who is the company that's working towards curing Hayden's.
Yeah.
And Lucas and that man get into kind of a tiff about it.
Because one is trying to sell products, one is trying to corner the market and stop the market from happening.
Yeah.
While all this is happening, there's also, in the weirdest coincidence ever, a terrorist attack on Loudon Pharma's facility.
So Van calls Shane.
By the way, her first name is Leslie.
Leslie Van?
What? It's never brought up, but that's messed up.
Huh.
Anyway, continue.
Calls up, is like, hey, there's been a huge explosion at Loudon Pharma.
We have to go.
We have to go. And then he's like, oh, I'm sitting across the table from its CEO. I was like, does he know?
No.
And then he sees their phone ring, or his phone ring, and
he's like, he does now?
Yeah, he's finding out now.
Yep.
So they get there, and it turns out it looks like the person who drove a car in was an integrator. So like, this might be our territory.
Mm-hmm.
We have an integrator here. Mm-hmm. They go and search the ID that the integrator used to get in was a Loudon Pharma employee's ID. Mm-hmm. They go to that employee's house and find that employee killed and left a note from like they integrated with the integrator and left a note saying, I worked for this company for so long. I think I've now come to find that what they do is bad.
Because it's a rich culture that Hayden's have. Because there's an overarching theme is like similar to how the deaf community is now, like it's the newest American culture. Because it is like this whole thing that's based out of what is technically a disability, but they've learned to cope so well that it's like
they've created such a rich culture.
Yeah. So they go, I think getting rid of that entirely would be morally incorrect.
Yeah, it would be
in this video
sort of a type of genocide.
Yeah.
And that's basically how this person feels about Loudon Pharma's work. So he's like, so I'm integrated. We're going to go drive a bomb under Loudon Pharma, blow up all the work, and then I'm going to come back and kill myself with my threep.
Yep. That's what it looks like happens.
Yeah.
Next is talking to the Navajo, right?
Yes.
Where we meet a bunch of really interesting folks.
Yeah. Claw Redhouse.
Yep.
Is the police officer that Chris works with, who's one of my favorite characters. Also, we find out the identity of the body is a man named Johnny Sani, who apparently seemed to have gotten sick as a child and gotten meningitis, but wasn't locked in, so he was never diagnosed with having Hayden's.
But apparently
he did, because when they looked at the body, Johnny had a neural network.
Yep.
And it was one that no one can recognize. And another so Chris is gonna go talk to Johnny's family.
And during the course of that, we learned that this is the thing I was going to say just now, that no one thought he had Hayden's because they didn't think he was sick. They just kind of thought he was slow.
Yeah.
Because that, they
sometimes the changes that Hayden's makes to the brain can affect how well
cognitive
you think.
ability,
Cognitive ability, and it seems to have done so in the case of Johnny.
Whereas he got sick when he was a kid, and then after that he was different, but that's still okay. We still loved Johnny. He was a really sweet guy.
He was nice. I'd say a lot of the time people would talk about him, they would talk about Johnny and mention he was kind of slow, but really nice.
Yeah, he was a very kind dude.
When people found out he died, they would always seem pretty upset because he just seemed like a nice human.
And so he learns that Johnny was offered a job at
So they have a server farm, and he applied for a janitor job there. He didn't get that job, and the next day his family's he was called back by the server farm and told about a different job.
And then he went and he got that job where that required him to travel a lot.
Yeah. And paid really well. They went to the server farm. They're like, no, we gave the job to someone else. I didn't call Johnny back.
Yeah.
So they discover it must have been someone else. They find out there's a company who has access to the Navajo medical database. and it is owned by Accelerant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another connection that Chris draws. And Chris decides to try and like look into that company.
Sure. Then what?
Johnny's been sending money orders.
Yeah,
and they trace
track
the money
money
orders
orders.
back to this city in California, I think. And there's a hospital there that the company that had the access to the Navajo data was there. So Chris goes there, goes to the post office, and is like, "Hey, I have money order. Do you know have you guys seen this man?" Like, "Oh, that's Ollie Green." So he was apparently living under a presumed name. He gathers that apparently Ollie didn't have an ID based on interactions that he had with the person, and finds out where Ollie was living. When he goes to stop by the apartment, there is a threep inside that doesn't have any markings on it, and it is just matte black. At this point, so Chris can travel to anywhere in the world as long as there's a threep for him to plug into. Threep for them to plug into, and they went to the LA FBI bureau, and they tried to put them in a threep that didn't have working legs in a wheelchair. So Chris dropped out and rented a threep.
Yeah.
Because Chris is obscenely wealthy.
Yeah.
But so Chris didn't have like the weapons
Yeah.
that they usually would have. So they engage in hand-to-hand combat with this other threep.
Which is really dope.
Yeah, and beats them with a frying pan.
Which is buck wild.
Yeah, and Chris finds an envelope marked to May and Janice Sonny, who are the living relatives of Johnny Sonny.
Yeah.
Chris gets a new apartment during their adventures, and one of their new flatmates works with neural networks.
Yeah.
Chris asks the flatmate Tony if he'll work on the case and look at the neural network that Johnny had.
Okay, so two things. We meant, like, this plot is so complicated because there's the main mystery plot, there's the setting up the world, there's everything going on with their dad, and then there's everything going on with them trying to find an apartment, and it's just like, there's like A, B, C, D, E, F plots in this.
Yes.
There's a lot going on. So it's a really good book, but you should listen to more than once. But it's introducing a couple of my favorite characters because Chris has gone all over the city trying to find an apartment. They finally settle on one that is kind of a community for Haydens and that sort of thing. And one of the characters in that is my favorite, and they're known as the twins. And he does not, and I had a chance to actually ask Scalzi about this, he does not flush it out on purpose, and apparently he might have flushed it out a little bit more in this upcoming novel, about which I'm quite excited. But they're twins, but they share a threep at the same time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Tony works with neural networks, and Chris goes, "Hey, have you seen anything like this? Can you track it down?"
Yeah.
And he's like,
If you
give me enough money, Zootsalor.
Yeah.
Basically.
It's like, I need
Oh,
work.
there it is.
Oh, yep.
I forgot what podcast we were doing.
So Tony looks into the network and is like, it's not a commercial network. It seems to be like a bunch of best in breed from a lot of different companies, but it's not something you could ever sell because so many of the pieces of how the network works are trademarked.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, by different people.
Yeah, like the way you would build a PC.
Yeah. So in the video that Johnny sent to May and Janice, basically says, "Hey, something's gone wrong with this job. It wasn't through the server farms. It was through another man, and there was two obviously fake names. And they basically put a computer in my head, and they said I was going to be an assistant for this man. But something started happening recently where I will like drop out and lose chunks of time, and I don't remember what happens. So like I was cooking something, and then I blank out, and I come back, and I know I've cooked it because it looks cooked, but it's cold already. And then there was one time I blanked out, and I woke up and I was in a room full of people, and then one of them said, "Oh shoot, the other guy's back," because because he disconnected. And then I blacked out again.
Yeah.
So and he said, I basically made this in case they make me hurt someone. I want you guys to know I wouldn't do that. It wasn't me. So one of the things Chris asks Tony to look into is like a way to take over or like knock out an integrator, which shouldn't be possible based on how the technology works.
Yeah.
So they set up, they're going to get an update from Tony, and then after that they're going to meet with the female integrator. And at the meeting, Tony's like, you were right to have me look into this. What they do is somehow, and they explain it better in the book, they let the Hayden take control of the integrator, and then when they log out, it dumps all of the
Information.
It dumps all the short-term memory.
Yeah.
So while it's happening, they feel their body being taken over. They feel trapped, and they don't understand what's going on. And then as soon as they log out, they lose all that time.
Which is absolutely horrific.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, just horrifying.
Yeah.
And this like freaks Van out a lot.
Because she used to be an integrator, and during her time during that, she almost was murdered because a depressed teenage girl wanted to see what it was like to actually die.
Yeah, and
almost jumped in front of a train, and someone stopped her. And because you don't have full control,
thing is,
but you
a lot
can
of times
intercede.
you can intercede, but integrating gave Van panic attacks, and Van managed that by drinking.
Yeah, so she was drunk at the time.
So it wasn't an issue with doing her job unless she needed to pull the brakes on someone, which in this case she did and couldn't.
Yep.
So another like someone saved Van's life.
Yeah.
And it was wild, and she quit being an integrator, and
That's why.
went with the bureau. A lot of that isn't public knowledge, but she tells Chris
Because it's pertinent
This is
data.
what's happening, and this is why it freaks me out so badly.
Yep. So,
And like, could this happen with any other networks? Because this network was designed to do this thing.
Yep.
And Tony's like, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be possible. Then they see the female integrator come up and wave and walk up to him, and then pull out a gun and it starts shooting at Van.
yep.
Uh,
And Chris takes all the bullets because
a
they're
little bit
made of
one in
metal.
the shoulder.
They're
Van
made of metal.
Yeah. But Chris does take a bullet and then chases down the integrator, who eventually stops in the middle of the road and pulls out a grenade.
Yep.
And Chris sees him pull out the grenade and runs away, but also sees the person look at the grenade with the pin pulled, drop it, and try to get away.
Yep.
And then after it blows up, Chris runs to the integrator, whose legs are gone.
Which is nasty. John has a habit of doing that in his books, where it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, that appendage, it's gone. At one point, one character in a different series loses their jaw.
It's rough.
It's
Oh.
terrible.
Ugh.
But anyway.
And the person's in shock, obviously, and not gonna make it. But
I'm shocked, and I don't think I'm going to make it.
says to Chris, I recognize you from the dinner. He wasn't there the whole time. I was there the whole time, but he wasn't there the whole time. And that's all, and dies. And Chris is like, hey, Tony, I'm definitely going to need you to look into that thing, because I have some pretty good evidence that whoever's doing this can do it to other integrators.
Yep.
Oh, after this, Van's like, okay, so that's done. We need to get people at your roommate's place in case someone tries to go after them, because they were witnesses here. And Chris is like, the person only shot at you. And Van's like, I'm the only person they shot at here. And Chris quickly logs out and goes to
Their home.
their parents' house.
Where their body is kept.
Yeah.
With a nurse and everything.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Sends the nurse out and warns their parents, and does see someone come in with a gun. Chris sneaks up on him with a pan. Again, though it's a person this time, instead of a threep. And the fight doesn't go well for Chris, and it looks like Chris is about to get shot, like the actual body. Chris is about to get shot when Marcus Shane shows up with a shotgun and blows a hole in the intruder,
thus ending that person's life and any chance that he will become senator.
Yeah.
One shot.
2 kills.
Great KD.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Chris gets a phone call from Claw Redhouse. because they had asked Claw to look into any other people who like got meningitis as a young person and not locked in the Navajo Nation. And he's like, I did find someone. And Chris is like, 1 second, takes a picture of his assailant, or of their assailant.
Is it this person?
Is it this person?
And he's like,
yes. Yep. This is not a coincidence, is it?
No.
So the upper echelon of the Navajo Nation talks to Chris and is like, hey, someone is using our people and we are dying. You need to solve this.
Yep.
Cool. Marcus is in tatters because he's just killed someone.
And someone was threatening their
family.
Yeah.
But Chris tells their parents, hey, this was just a break-in. They happened to break in here. I was home for dinner. That's all. Whoever's doing this, I don't want them to know I'm on to them.
Yep.
They talk to Tony again, who's been looking at the software, and says, yes, it's possible to get this program into other neural networks, but it's super crazy how they do it. Like, no one's ever thought of this. It's ingenious coding. Like, I hack into neural networks as for my job, and this is something I never have thought of.
But he recognizes the way in which it is coded.
Yes.
Which is super important.
Yeah, he recognizes the code and because of how it is laid out, he knows who coded it.
Yeah, and is it Hubbard or the other person?
Lucas Hubbard.
It's Lucas Hubbard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't have anything to tie Lucas Hubbard to it besides like
the code.
They know it's his code, but there's not really a precedent for that being used in the law.
And they also introduced this idea of like, can you reverse this? Can you trap someone in?
Yeah.
By reversing the code? And Tony is like, maybe.
Yeah. Tony can definitely close this back door that's being used to get into integrators, and maybe possibly can do more.
Yep.
They also discover like, okay, we need to stop Hubbard. And the way they do that is they figure out what Hubbard's end game is.
And when we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Tristan.
Hey, Christina.
Do you like anime?
I don't know.
Do you like me?
Yes.
Do you want to watch anime with me?
Yes.
Do you want to make it into a podcast?
Yes.
Great.
What's it going to be called?
It's called the Animazing Podcast.
When it comes out?
It comes out every Saturday. Bye.
And we're back.
I
hope you enjoyed it. That was good commercials.
Yeah. Comic commercials. What?
What?
Stop. Hubbard.
Hubbard, you kidding me?
The thing is, Hubbard has been swooping.
Hubbard, you kidding me? Come on.
That's Hubbardly anything.
That was better than what I did, though. Well done.
Hubbard has been swooping in and buying out other companies, including making an offer on Loudon Pharma.
Which is buck wild.
Considering
they're in competition, but also with the destruction of literally everything they've been working towards, the CEO is considering taking the offer.
Is looking to sell because building everything from the ground up again sounds exhausting.
Because not only did they destroy their building, they didn't have a backup place to put all their data because there were backup
data. They had backup data, but it was stored multiply on different servers in their buildings. They're like, what Hubbard's trying to do is destabilize the market.
Yeah.
So that he can swoop in, get all of the businesses he can just buy outright, have every Hayden as pretty much exclusively his customers. And then also, one of the things Abram Kettering sets a path to is eventually allowing neural networks to be used for people who aren't Haydens.
Yeah,
so people
specifically like elderly people who can't get around very well.
Paraplegic, people like with terminal illnesses who want to be able to like spend the last part of their days on their feet as opposed to in bed. Who could use this technology,
but it's very dangerous.
It's super dangerous to put a computer to put a second brain in your brain.
Yeah.
So he wants to, when that occurs, he wants to have a monopoly on the market, which he's setting up to do. The final thing he's going to do to destabilize the market is use the body he's been inhabiting for a week,
Nicholas Bell,
to murder Alexandra Bell,
who is the main.
who is the leader of the walkout and march.
Yeah.
And so
she is the face.
it's going to be a huge riot. It's a huge riot's going to occur. There's already been some human and Threep violence. But when the leader of this march is killed by her brother, who then spouts anti-Hayden just trash, DC's going to burn to the ground. The market's going to tank, and Hubbard's going to get anything he wants at any price he wants.
Also, like, it'll create a lot of political unrest, obviously, and he'll be able to pass bills that will ensure certain things happening.
Yeah.
So, they get all that figured out.
And Chris goes to talk to Alexandra Bell.
Yeah.
And basically,
he's like, I got a plan.
I have a plan.
Because
we need to save your brother.
We want to save you.
We want to save you. And, like, if we just go in and try and arrest Hubbard now, the first thing he's going to do is get rid of all evidence, including the one person who can account for all his actions, which is
your brother.
Your brother.
What's also really interesting about Alexandra as a character is that she has never used a Threep. She's only ever lived in a liminal space.
Yeah, she's only been in the Agra and liminal space. She's never set foot in the physical world.
So
she was born with Havens also. She's one of the few people who was born with Havens who didn't die.
Yeah, she's very ethereal and a bit strange, but it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But she agrees, presumably, to this plan. Hubbard integrates with Bell, goes to try and murder her. Chris is there in a Threep, and then a chase ensues.
Yeah. Thing is, there's a body and there's a monitor, and Nicholas stabs the body, but no blood comes out.
And he's like, "Buh."
Yeah, and then Chris jumps out, chases him down, and they get him.
Yep.
They also go in. They also bring in the lawyer and basically go, "Hey,
Hubbard will be totally willing to let you take the fall, so
this.
You need to testify against him.
We know this is happening.
We can get you out in 10 years at well, not even.
Yeah,
he's like,
we can try and get you out
soon, but like, you're gonna go to prison for a while or for life. Pick one.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I guess for a while then.
Yeah. And then they have Bell in an interrogation room. And Bell's basically like, "Yep, I tried to kill my sister. You got it. You're searching my apartment now. You're gonna get my note. I killed my sister. I was gonna kill myself. I was gonna kill my sister. I was gonna kill myself. She's dangerous." Like, okay, yep, cool. Got that. Wrote all that down. Great confession. By the way, how long are you gonna keep this up, Hubbard?
Yeah.
He's like, "What are you talking about?"
And then slowly he does give it up, and then they do a trump card of
they threaten him.
They can go, "We can keep you in that body forever."
And we can give Nicholas Bell control. And people would... Bell's a known integrator for you. Bell could just
do whatever
you. Start selling off bits of the company you built while you watch, and use it to keep funding Hayden things that are no longer funded by the government. So what do you say? Like, and either you watch your company burn, or you tell us everything.
And he decides to tell them everything, confess to it. They get it all onto that good tape, and then they kind of go, "Psych, we didn't have that.
We did not have that ability at all.
You're an idiot.
You're an idiot. Go home. We're gonna arrest you for real."
And then they do, and then it ends with the march being like a peaceful, peaceful thing.
In the end, Marcus Shane works with the Navajo and that server farm that isn't being used to make a non-profit version of the Agora.
Yep.
Because Hubbard had bought out the government version of the Agora.
Yep. Whereas Navajo nations are nations unto themselves and not by the U.S. government, so they can just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Which is something I think a lot of people forget in regards to, like, when we talk about like reservations and stuff. It's not like it's reserved for these people, but it also is like it's a different country.
It's one of my favorite things about Longmire is like they deal with like the jurisdiction between the res and the town in a lot of really interesting ways, and it brings in a lot of like interesting conflict.
So most of the problems that are proffered at the beginning of the book are solved by the end of the book. It's a nice little kind of wrapped up in a bow.
Yes.
But they also are like, hey, he's still an FBI agent, and it opens it up for a sequel because he's
like more things said in this world, which is so cool. Like, if you guys haven't read it beforehand now, like, I know we literally told you the plot, but check it out. Like, the things Scalzi does best to me are the way his characters interact and the way he like sets up worlds in a way that like feels
Natural.
like they're fully realized giant worlds, and you still only get to see a little bit of them.
Yeah, what's really interesting as well is like he does this in both this book and also Dispatcher, where he creates a character that doesn't fully know what's going on, or he creates a couple characters. So characters have to explain, like they give exposition about what's going on, but it doesn't feel forced because it's necessary for the other character in the scene to know.
Yeah.
He creates high stakes things like with in Dispatcher with the cop and the dispatcher. She's like, I need to know this for this investigation. And with this, it's like, I need to know what's going on with these integrators because it's part of the investigation as well. So so it's necessary, which is really great. I think his dialogue is really fun and funny. And like, also he just builds worlds that are interesting because it's not that complicated. It's just one thing about our world now in the near future is different, and it's a reasonable thing.
Yeah.
Which is great. I also like how the portrayal of, number one, the main character not needing a gender, I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Scalzi has always been very progressive in regards to putting real people in his stories, like, and also the way he handles indigenous people of the United States is really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
And to go, like, they do have their own thing, and it is valid, and it is good. Also, another thing that Chris Shane does, side note, is Chris sends Johnny Sani's body back to his parents, which is a really lovely thing.
Yeah.
Because what's really cool about Chris is, like, they just have an inordinate amount of money. They can kind of just do whatever they want, which is...
And they decide to help people.
Yep.
Which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about like the thing that drew this book to my attention at first was, one, I've read everything Scalzi's ever written, and I will continue to do so. But two, like, I saw an article talking about the two readers, and what jumped out at me about that is like he's done something like that in the past, and this other example, like, I've never seen anyone else talk about really. But he has another book called The Android's Dream, and there's like a character named Archie, and Archie has a
whole plot.
But like a love interest that named Sam, whose gender is never specified.
Yep.
And it could be
either
a boy
way
or a girl. It's just never specified.
And because it doesn't matter to the story.
Yeah.
All that matters is how that character feels about that. And like what's really great about this is like it doesn't, because also threeps are like genderless.
Yeah.
Because they're machines. It doesn't really matter to the story and how people treat this person, other than with the privilege of being a rich person.
Yeah.
And it's also, what's also really interesting about it, since they are a rich person, it's also really interesting hearing about like that side of culture, and like you have all sorts of different folks of political and social backgrounds in this thing.
Yeah.
It's really interesting and really great.
I can't recommend anything Scalzi writes highly enough.
I would love to see Tessa Thompson as Agent Van. I think she would be great.
I want Lucy Lawless.
I don't know who that is.
Xena.
Sure. Okay.
I saw her in Ash vs. the Evil Dead.
Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay.
And I'm like, oh, yes, please. Oh, my God. I actually tweeted about it.
And then also, yeah, I really like this book. And also, like, there's a bonus novella if you get the audiobook, explaining, just, that's a series of essays, kind of World War Z style, just about the beginning of Hayden's.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I
if
love
you're a
getting
big old,
that background information.
Yeah, if you're a big old nerd like us. And then I'm excited to read this next one, which we're going to talk about next week. But yeah, I really like this book, and I think John Scalzi does good work in general.
He is going to be in town next week. If you guys are in New York, Scalzi's touring here on Tuesday the 24th. I want to say the 24th. Yeah.
At Strand Bookstore at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's really interesting, and like, what's really cool about it is how believable it is that would be the case. Like, people would treat people with Hayden's that way.
Like, there's this whole thing where like, people don't want Hayden sitting down at shops because they want those seats for humans who will actually buy food.
Yeah.
So Hayden's are like, they're hanging out, but they have to stand, which isn't more tiring for them. It's just kind of awkward.
And it's also like a reminder that you're different.
Yeah. It's just like a little prejudice that people have that's normalized.
Yep.
And I love the novella at the end, like talks about like how they developed the different technologies, and I'm such a nerd for that. Like I think it's so cool.
And also, like, there's this whole discussion at the beginning of the book about use of language in general, because there's threep or clank. Clank is like a slur, more or less, and it's one of those things of like a guy doesn't know,
He doesn't remember which one he's not supposed to say.
which I believe, and that's something that people do with these new terminologies,
Yeah.
because it's changing so much and people just don't know. But then the way the character handles it is really great, because he's like, oh, that makes sense, I'm sorry, I literally don't think about this on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And
And
Chris is annoyed and is upset, but then goes, okay,
I understand.
yeah.
And they get to talking, and that's how it comes up. Like, I'm sure you guys have unflattering terms for us.
Dodgers, dogs, lips, and assholes. Yeah, that sort of thing.
So it leads to, like, a conversation about the thing, which is handled well, as opposed to a fight or two people just parting ways thinking
Yep,
the other is just a bad person.
agreed. And I think that's really good, just a good example. And then, like, also having your second lead character dealing with panic attacks and PTSD in a way that is that she doesn't cope healthily, but is realistic.
Yeah.
Of
Of smoking and drinking.
and what's really cool is about, because like this is near future, so cars self-drive in this, but Van never does, because she needs that control over everything she does.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And
Yeah,
and
and it's cool because she gives reasons that she drives.
but she never gives the actual reason,
Yeah.
but you can figure it out by the end of the book.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Yeah, Scalzi's just a really good writer in use of, like, also, like, callbacks and Chekhov guns in the slightest way, and he just builds character really, really well. He's a very fine author.
Yeah. He's my favorite living author.
Same.
I rate this one 10 out of 10 robot heads.
I was gonna say.
A 10 out of 10 mustache refrigerator magnets that you just slap right on that bad boy.
Yep, absolutely. And, like, what is it from Futurama? Bender's evil twin.
Yeah, the goatee.
With the key, yeah. The same. And I'm gonna try and have a way to integrate Melissa's notes when she gives them to us, even if it is just a separate audio file that we'll release on the feed later on.
Okay.
But thank you for listening, and we hope you go and listen or read the book. You can do either, and then check out John's other stuff.
Yeah.
I call this meeting adjourned.
Gavel sound.
J'accuse E.
C'est lui pour moi, moi pour lui dans la vie. Il me l'a dit, la joué pour la fille. Et dès que je l'aperçois, alors je sens en moi mon